Let's get into it. Soul Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. We got 2 Joe Rogan clips. We're going to go from Andrew Schultz back to Billy Corgan. And what we're talking about, Joe Rogan's, he's talking about people pretending to be somebody else when they're at work. Then they touch on the show Severance, which also explores that whole aspect. Then we go over to Billy Corgan, where he's talking about audience capture and how celebrities have to often pretend to be someone else that they're not. And then I'm connecting all that to how we have to be today because of social media. And on the way in explaining that, I play a little bit of Alan Watts talking about society. If you don't know who Alan Watts is, this is going to be a mind blow for you. If you know who he is, then this is just going to be a treat for you. But let's start with the Rogan stuff, and then we'll get into the rest.
After me, I was hoping that he would bomb. And I remember thinking that, like, what a bitch-ass way to think that is.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a bitch-ass way to think. And I completely shifted my perspective. Because, like, you don't think like that with martial arts. Like, you can't think like that. You know, you can't think like that.
Yeah.
You can't think like that ever. That's like a weak thought.
Yes.
And then I realized, like, oh, this is like your brain trying to occupy itself with, you know, this time that's going to be between you and your goal of doing something in comedy. And it's so far away. You suck. You're 21 years old and you suck.
So everybody else got to suck.
So you want people to fail and you want to do better.
Yeah.
And it's like just a total scrambly, I don't know what I'm doing with my life thought.
Yeah.
And I realized, I was like, oh, that's a bitch ass thought.
But that is very normal for human beings.
Oh, yeah.
I
There's
feel
a lot
like
of bitches out there.
yeah, like we're kind of
People give
made
in.
in general. Like it
Well-
takes more effort to not be a bitch, actually.
Especially if you have a job. So if you have a regular job, like an office job,
Yeah.
you will pretend to be a whole different person for 8 hours a fucking day, every day of your life that you're there.
Yeah.
That is a lot of time bullshitting.
Yeah.
And when you get out of all that bullshit, there's not much you left. Whatever could have been you never grew because whatever could have been you was stifled by fluorescent lights and a fucking monitor.
You're watching Severance, right?
Oh, yeah.
There, I mean, clearly it's a metaphor for, I don't know, there's a lot of things that go on to
There's
it.
a lot going on with
And
that
also,
show.
shout out Ben Stiller. I didn't even know Ben had this like level to him.
Right.
I've always respected Ben. I thought he was hilarious, making great comedy movies. But I didn't know he was like an avant-garde storyteller. Like,
Right.
I mean,
It's
this
also
is-
the way it's shot is
It is
brilliant.
The first episode, every shot, I don't know who the DP is. Like, we should find out who that guy is. But every shot has like perfect symmetry. Did you notice that?
I didn't notice
You
it,
could
but
cut the
it's just-
screen in half every single shot.
Really?
It is a masterpiece. And but I think about that, like this idea of like severing yourself. A lot of people are doing that at work anyway.
100%.
And it's what you were describing. They're this other person at work for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
They aren't their self. There's a different identity. They make up these little terms like, oh, it's my work wife. It's like, yeah.
Well, that's why it's so easy to push like crazy woke nonsense into an office space because people are already bullshitting.
Oh, so if we're already pretending here, what
Yeah.
else are we going to pretend
What
about?
else do I have to do to keep this job?
Yeah.
What do I have to do to get a promotion? What do I have to do? Do I have to pretend that trans kids, what is it? Drag queen shows? Okay, I'm in. I'm in. Healthcare? Yeah, it's on my dick. Whatever you want to call it.
And it's
Gender affirming? Was that what we're calling it? Okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, to see how little pushback there is about, like, from the workers now that all these like programs are being wiped away. Like,
Well, the people that are losing their job are complaining hard.
Well,
and
no.
then the senators are complaining hard. But
Yeah.
everybody else is happy.
yeah, the people who've been faking it at work that are still working there are not like, damn it, you know what I mean? They're just going, all right, good, I get to be like a little closer version to myself.
It's very true. So, talking about Severance, if you don't know what Severance is, I'm not going to spoil it and show any clips of it or anything, but it's basically a premise where people are at work and they have a brain implant, predictive programming, Elon Musk, they have a brain implant that separates them from their work self and their personal self. And that way you're not feeling, you don't know anything about your personal self when you're at work, no thoughts about that whatsoever. So you're not dreading the day, and vice versa. Very interesting stuff. It's very much like Black Mirror. Now, just touching on what they were talking about. Now, the whole thing about this is we already kind of have this brain chip. In a sense, it is our phones. Our phones, and I guess you could say also our online presences. But it's definitely our phones, 100%. It makes this weird separate. I'm just pulling up the next clip. It makes this weird separation for us. So we have it at work, and we have it on our phones. So the thing is, this separation of ourselves is growing more and more to the point where usually you're more yourself and then you have your whole work and everything. But now this other element's arrived, and it's almost like you're your actual self the least. And I know some of you are like me and you don't care and you're just out there. I get it. But I'm just saying, as the masses, you don't get to be yourself nearly as much. Let's jump over to this next clip and then we're just going to dive into the whole subject.
I never been there.
Sorry. I have this plague that I can't get rid
But
of.
if you have that Tommy's perception that everything's work, the whole world gets really weird.
Well, I think we're there.
Yeah. We definitely are when it comes to politics and the news.
I think our whole culture has been turned into like where are we?
Right.
Like, that's why I started calling it like 5-7 years ago, a post-truth era.
Right.
I mean, we've all been in that situation where somebody in our inner circle will bring up something that we know from a factually presented basis isn't true. I heard so-and-so did so-and-so, and you go, no, that's not true. Let me show you the YouTube clip. You know what I mean? This didn't happen, or no, so-and-so made a left, not a right. But because of what they've heard, they believe it. And you can literally show them something and say, no, look. And they're like, well, that must be AI or edited. It's like once somebody becomes convinced of this culture, it's really hard to unconvince them.
Right.
And so from a performing point of view and somebody who's now also in the podcasting sphere, it's like, is it better to play into what people want? Like I really appreciated in Bruce Springsteen's Broadway special when in the first 5 minutes of the thing, he basically says, I'm not really Bruce Springsteen. Have you ever seen it?
No.
It's really worth watching. In the first 5, it's when he did his long Broadway run. You know about that? He did this thing where it was like he would talk and then play songs.
No, I didn't even know.
Oh
he
yeah,
did
it was huge. He went on this massive Broadway run.
Huh.
And the HBO did it and put it on as a special. But he literally in the first 5 minutes of talking, and it's about 1,200 people a night, so it's a live audience, and he says in the first 5 minutes, by the way, I'm not Bruce Springsteen. Like I mean that's my name, but the Bruce Springsteen you think, he's like, I don't know how to fix a car. I've never been a factory in my life. he serious.
Yeah.
Now I knew that as a performer, I knew that what I was watching wasn't real, but people want him to play John Wayne so bad that he puts his finger in there and says, okay, you want me to be John Wayne? I'll be John Wayne.
Right. But that's audience capture, right?
Yes, but now we're in the business of it. I mean, there's obviously examples, historical antecedents over the last 100 years of
Right.
media where people would figure it out.
Right.
Charlie Chaplin or something, you know what I mean? Like they wanted him to be the tramp, so he became the tramp.
Right.
He wasn't that guy at all.
Right.
He fed into it and obviously connected to something real in him, but he wasn't really a tramp. He was a complete Rich Lothario.
Well, you really see it in The Dictator, that movie, The Dictator.
Yeah.
Where he has that insane speech at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Uniting the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was an out-and-out socialist, basically.
And a brilliant guy. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Which is really crazy when you think about how silly his character was. His character was this like bumbling, stumbling goof.
So that's what I'm saying. What is more valuable, what the public wants from you or what is true? In the entertainment world, we're used to it, right?
Yeah.
Like you could play Joe Rogan, comedian, at the drop of a hat because you've done it. And Joe Rogan, the UFC announcer, just I'm not saying it's not who you are, but it's an extenuation. We say in wrestling, you turn the volume up to 11.
Right.
It's still Joe Rogan. I don't see you
Yeah.
as being disingenuous. I can't even think of one time I've ever seen you in any media where I thought that he's not Joe Rogan. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I've done it. I've played other people. So what I'm trying to say is now we're in this thing where like everybody's doing it. I mean, everybody. We've all looked at some girl on the internet and said, that's not how she really looks. And you got to go
Right.
through the Instagram and like you find the real picture.
Right.
Like everybody's kind of become comfortable with like a filter over everything. So that's what I mean. We're in a post-truth world where the impression is becoming more valuable than the reality. That's really, I think, unprecedented.
Yeah, I think so too. But I also think that authenticity is more valuable now than ever before because it's hard to find.
Well, that would be my argument for why my band has risen back up. Because we're one of the only bands left that sort of represents some ideal that's long abandoned.
Right. You're not a corporate creation.
No, we never were.
Right.
And we were.
And there's so many of them now. You feel like, like you ever seen Kinnison's bit about the monkeys?
the band, the Monkeys?
Yeah.
I don't give me the.
Well, it's a bit about Manson. It was, and then he does this bit about the Monkees, about they weren't a real fucking band, like because they were pieced together by a corporation. The Monkees, like one of which were great. The Monkees are great. I'm a believer. They have some great songs, but they were kind of one of the first corporate creations.
But I actually on my podcast recently interviewed Mickey Dolenz.
Oh wow!
And we talk a lot about this very subject. It hasn't aired yet, but. He was less interested in the discussion than I was because my argument would be is that the Monkees are actually the template that came. Our whole lives, the Monkees were dismissed as an anachronistic thing that went against the integrity of the Beatles.
Right.
But if you actually look now, Beatles versus Monkees, the Monkees are more accurate of what came than the Beatles.
In what way?
Because authenticity is less and less and less important. Those who establish authenticity, and I would include myself amongst that, and I would include you in that, they're very valuable. But you also know, because of your public things that have gone on, you've had to stand there and take a lot of shit because just even speaking your own truth is inconvenient in a post-truth world.
Yeah.
Right? So it's actually more politically expedient to create a character that can navigate this new world. And by the way, change on a dime.
Right.
Does it make sense the way I'm
positing? No, it does make sense.
So my argument
makes sense.
So my argument would be from a rock and roll historical point of view is that the Monkees are actually more relevant now in a particular way. The Beatles are this preeminent band. That's not the argument I'm making. I'm saying is the model of the Monkees, which was always held up as for a form of mockery.
Right.
See, this is what you get when you make plastic music. No, we live in the age of plastic music now.
Right.
Yes. And it's not that authenticity right now isn't wanted. And the thing about it is, the reason I play that clip is because, he's talking about celebrities. They're talking about these two, incredible bands, these two big bands. But that extends to all of us now. All of us are now, because of social media, all of us are now forced into this plastic type of mold. We're all forced to wear this plastic type of mask, It's very interesting. It's almost like it's an invisible social shock collar that we all now have to wear. And before it was just the celebrities that had to wear it, and they do. But now it slowly becomes everybody. And it's all because of social media. It's all because we all stepped into this online world. Because now your online world, it extends to your physical world, where you say something online and then it can extend to your job, and then you can get fired, and then it can impact your family. And that's happening more to regular people than it is to celebrities now, And then, that question that he asked, what the public wants or what is true, and now we're kind of all having to face that. Because even if you were to make because some people go the route of, let's just make an anonymous account and then I'll say whatever I want. But then there's another separation, because is that you? Because you can't attach yourself to that online presence. You can't say, I'm Jim and that's me, then that's just my burner account that I use. You can't say that. So now this online presence becomes something else. And it's another thing that you have to hide. And you have to hide the way that you are at home. Maybe you're conservative, you're in a super liberal field. I had that pretty much. I worked in film and television, and I always had these conservative views. I mean, now they're a little more flourished and developed because I'm always talking about it. But it was always there, If someone came up to me and was like asking me like what a man is and what a woman is, I'd be like, what the hell? What are you talking about? You know what I mean? I'd be like, this is in this. I wouldn't do, it's a social construct. I wouldn't know to say any of that stuff. And then I don't mince my words. But again, you kind of have to be quiet about certain things. I've told this story before. I remember being on set, and I was getting along with this guy. He's a director of photography, and we're talking and we're connecting on a bunch of different stuff. And I'm like, do you listen to Jordan Peterson? Have you heard Jordan Peterson? Because I'm about to like talk to him about some stuff. And he's like, oh, and he kind of like shushes me kind of thing. And then we're over by Kraft. It's just where you get coffee and food and stuff. And he's like, man, I can't talk about that stuff on set. I can't talk about Jordan Peterson, And he starts talking about how he can't really talk about how he listens to Jordan Peterson because then people are going to look at him a certain way and more conservative. And the next thing he knows, he's not going to get other jobs, or, you know, maybe even gets removed from this one. And that was a real thing. And I remember being like, wow, I had a much lower level job than he did, so I wasn't really concerned, but he was up there. So he didn't want that to happen. It's just very interesting the way this all happens. I have a bunch of things written down here. Yeah, social media made us all fake celebrities. Like, now it's all of us, you know? People, and this goes back to the point about the monkeys, you respect fake now more than real. And not you, but I mean the masses. They respect fake more than real. They respect money more than integrity. They respect material more than integrity. You know? If you tell somebody, I mean, this argument comes up all the time with artists. If you say this artist, all their songs are written by someone else, people say, I don't care, he's rich. He has more money than you. Who are you to even speak? He has more money than you. And it's like, yeah, but he paints his nails and he's pouting in pictures. He acts all feminine. It's like, you wouldn't want to be a guy like that. Oh, yeah, I would. He has that money. He made that money. You know, it's this weird thing. And then the whole talk about the masks that we have to wear. Let me pull up this Alan Watts clip here. The masks that we have to wear constantly. You know, the shock collar that we have to wear. What else do I have written down here? You respect that. And it's not just that people respect fake more than real. You being real will anger them because it becomes, why don't you have to go along with everything? This actually pertains to the Alan Watts clip I'm going to play right now. Why don't you have to go along with everything? We're all going along. We're all being polite. We're all nodding our heads to, you know, Orange Man bad. We're all nodding our heads to, you know, Jordan Peterson is evil. We're all nodding our heads to this, and you're not nodding your head. They actually get mad. It's not that they're mad at your view. They're mad at the fact that you get to just speak the way that you want to speak, you know? So authenticity gets pushed aside. People don't want it as much because it kind of shows, if everyone's wearing a mask, then it's kind of agreed upon. And mask is actually a perfect analogy. I mean, you can remember, if everybody's wearing a mask, then everybody just says, yeah, we're all doing it. But when somebody's not, they all go, well, I mean, I don't want to take mine off because I don't want to be a bad person, but like, why does he not have to wear his? And I don't understand. Why does he get to be real and I have to hide myself until I get home to my wife? And then it gets even worse because sometimes it's even, you still have to hide a lot of yourself from your family because they don't like the dream that you had or the things that you want to do or the way that you want to express yourself or the fact that you want to pick up guitar and you want to start doing that again. They don't like all that. So now you have to hide yourself even more. And then the online thing kicks in and it's like, when do you actually get to be yourself, you know? And if you're one of those people like me, you get to be yourself all the time. I mean, I have this tattoo on my hand so I get to be myself all the time. It makes it so I can't hide. That's why I have it. I have a whole sleeve of just like mushrooms, you know? Just like it's all just covered in mushrooms. It's so I can't hide and I can't act like someone else. Because if I try to act a certain way, eventually they'll see my hand and they'll be like, oh, I know something very big about this guy that this guy does, that this guy partakes in, you know? But so many people, like they have to hide. They have to. It's very interesting. Alan Watts talking about society and the outsiders here. You have to make sure this is not at double speed. Okay.
Playing. Don't take it too seriously. Because if you take it too seriously, you're going to start destroying each other and fighting and saying this city against that city, this country against that country, so on, because you're too involved. So every sane society allows a certain number of people to deviate. Monks, some sort of outsiders. It says you don't have to join. You don't have to play the game. A society which is insane and unsure of itself cannot allow that to happen. It says everybody must join. Everybody must work. Everybody must belong. And then freedom disappears. Because as a matter of fact, the anxiety is if you say, well, you don't have to join, there are conditions under which you can go out, then a lot of people get together and say, well, what would happen if everybody quit? I ask, what would happen if everybody decided to take American Airlines Flight 3 to New York tomorrow? Well, they just wouldn't get on. I mean, and they won't anyhow. Because a lot of people aren't interested in that, are not ready to quit. That doesn't mean that they're inferior. The acorn is not inferior to the oak tree. It's a potential oak, but as an acorn, it's just as beautiful and lovely a thing as a full-grown oak is. A baby is as lovely as an adult, sometimes a great deal more lovely. So a person who is in a beginning state of evolution is just as marvelous as a person in a high state of evolution. Just as much a manifestation of the divine dance. So, when a society allows a certain number of people to withdraw, it should have no anxiety that everybody will want to withdraw. Because some people are absolutely fascinated in competition, in being involved, in playing the game. They should be. It's fine for them. But we are witnessing in the United States today a great motivation for withdrawal. It's simply because we haven't provided for it. We haven't, there's no opportunity for a Protestant to become a monk, or a Jew. The Catholics have half-heartedly provided for this sort of thing. And there have to be people who stand outside the game and do not identify themselves with a class, with a name, with an ego, with a persona, with a role.
Now, that's Alan Watson. That's how things were. But again, going back to social media, going back to this invisible shock collar that they've put on us, all of us, this phone, these profiles, they no longer want that small percentage of people to not play the game. Now everybody has to play. And in fact, the only people who are really excluded from the game seem to be, crazy drug addicts. And I don't mean crazy mentally. I just mean the guys who are knotted out and bent up and stuff like that. And the homeless people, right? One and the same sometimes, a lot of times. They seem to be the only people who aren't really allowed, who are allowed to not play the game. But then arguably they're playing the game the most. The game of life. It's like they got life metaphorically and physically injected right into them, It's just very interesting to think about people not being themselves. And then also to think about, am I being myself all the time? What a great guy this guy is, huh? Oh man, if you don't know about this guy, go listen to more of him. But yeah, there's a lot of us who are now regular people now suffer from audience capture. Audience capture is, Benny Johnson can't suddenly start talking about liberal values. Just not Matt Walsh can't do that. There's just they're captured. Me with this channel, when you're on YouTube, you can't just make a food video and then a cooking video and then a vlog and then a car video. You can't do that. It'll destroy your channel. It used to be called golden handcuffs. You get a job that makes you so much money that you're kind of handcuffed to it. So it's like you got all this gold, but they're in the form of handcuffs. That's what it used to be called. But I'm thinking of it like a shock collar, because when I do step out of those constraints, when I do step out of those, like we talked about, what was it called? Rule sets. I believe it was called rule sets, is what Thomas Campbell was talking. When I do step out of that, I get a shock. I get a shock in revenue going down 65%. That's a real number. Happened recently. I get these little shocks. That's why I had to make the other channel. I'm like, I need freedom. I can't just not have any freedom. And even this, being able to do this gives me a sense of freedom, because I don't want to talk about politics all the time, every single day. I want to explore my thoughts. Like right now, I didn't hash this out for hours. I like the thought process to be done live, in a sense. I'm working out this thought process as I was hearing that, because I heard Andrew Schultz talk about that, and I remember Billy Corgan talked about something similar. And it's like, yeah, people at work have to pretend just as much as celebrities have to pretend who are audience captured, ideologically captured. Many people in Hollywood are very conservative, but they just can't show it. And it extends everywhere. They just can't be that way. Just like back in the 50s, guys would be gay and they would have to just stay closeted for decades and decades and decades. And, comes out later on, crazy stuff like Marlon Brando and Richard Pryor. You ever hear about that? If you haven't heard about that and I just said that to you, you're like, what do you mean, Coach? Huh? What do you mean, Marlon Brando and Richard Pryor? Yeah, Marlon Brando and Richard Pryor. Go look it up. I can't get into the explicits, but Marlon Brando and Richard Pryor. Weird stuff. Weird stuff. But yeah, that's just what's happening. And it's today. It makes me wonder, because I haven't lived back then. But today it has to be worse than ever, because, all those people that weren't attached to the technology like we are. We are attached to the technology, For a bunch of you, you got this notification. You get notifications all the time when videos come out. Sometimes YouTube doesn't do that for me. I don't know why. But you get notifications. Like we're entangled in this thing. And it's forcing us to not be ourselves. And it's a good game that they have set up, because as they force us to not be ourselves, they slowly push. The thing is, I was talking about this with my friend. Because I was showing him pictures of, you ever seen the pictures of girls who go to college and they look like just a regular, girl coming out of high school, and they're like, and they got long hair and they're like varsity and they're like, and then by the time they're done, it's like shaved head, lip ring, nose ring, hoop thing that comes out, and, tattoos, and, they've gained a bunch of weight. Like, this is like a whole bunch of just completely different. And we were talking about it, and we were talking about how things like this online presence, this being captured, it forces you to empty yourself. Like being a part of, we'll just use wokeness as the thing. Part of that ideology forces you to empty yourself, to get rid of all of that stuff. That's why they kind of put it on, your parents are bad. And, you have a lot of young people looking at their parents as racist, and et cetera, et cetera. It forces you to empty yourself, and then you get filled with the woke nonsense. So they take away your identity, and then they give you this identity, which is why so many of them, you're like, why do they all wear these glasses? Why do they all have this hairdo? Why do they all say these things? It's because they have this one identity that they're allowed to have. The women have one and the men have the other, and that's it. That's what you get. And they look the same and they talk the same and they all talk in upspeak, and it's a thing, you know? And and as much as I want to blame wokeness, which is like what's wokeness? It's just like in the air. It's just a word that I use. You know, it starts with this social media shock collar that we have, this audience capture that we have. The audience has just expanded, I think what I'm saying is, you know, and I just want you to think about that. Think about an actor that has an audience. Think about a YouTuber that has an audience. And then think of yourself and think if you have an audience. And if you could be captured by that audience. That audience can be the people that you work with, your social groups, men's group if you're a part of them, gym community if you have that going on, sports teams, family, extended family, you know, core friends that you've had forever who are like family. This is your audience. And now we have, and on top of that, the online communities that you're a part of, you know, you can be audience captured in that sense. So it's not just for celebrities anymore. It can happen to everyone. And again, I'm not saying it's happening to you directly, because you might be a recluse. You might be one of those deplorables, like me. You know? But it's wild that that's happening to everybody. And I just thought of that as I was seeing that clip, and I was like, I remember Billy was talking about something like this as well. Very intelligent coming from Billy as well. I kind of glazed over that clip when I was going through and doing my thing, you know, pulling up the clips and blah. I was more focused on him and Bill Burr being brothers and all that nonsense. But yeah, very intelligent coming from him. And it's true, the plastic, the fake, that is what we are now all taught to idolize in a sense, aspire to in a sense, because the celebrities that we're watching are fake. You know, not just fake in the roles that they play, they're fake in what we see as their real selves. They're fake. And then so many people, and then again, the people online that you see. Like right now, I'm kind of like, I guess I'm like breaking a fourth wall, I guess. If I was thinking of it from like a showbiz performance stance, I don't know. But I mainly do stand up, right? So it's like that's what I do. I don't know. But so many people that you see online, they're like that. They have this fakeness, and if you saw them in person, it wouldn't be the same person. You know? It's weird. It's very, very weird to think about. You know, in life, you always think that you've broken through, you know, and you are who you are. You've evolved. And then there's always more. You know, recently I've just, you know, there's been something that broke through, and I didn't do anything. You know? It's just something that kind of evolved. You know, fatherhood kicks in, and, you know, who do you want to be? How much time do you have? You know, Rogan always says you got 80 summers, you know? If you're my age, if you're like 40-ish, you know, you got 40 left. You'd be very lucky to get 40, you know? I had a good friend of mine. He passed away younger than I. He passed away years ago. One of my best friends, he's like a brother to me, but he passed away years ago, and he was younger than me, you know? I have another person who's like a brother to me. Their sister passed away when they were like 28. You know, you never think that you have that little amount of summers. You know, we kind of feel like we're promised very old age, but we're actually not, you know? And that's why it's so important, this topic of, you know, being real, being actually real, and not letting, again, back to, you know, if you watch the other thing, tinfoil time, and that's kind of what I'm just going to call this. I'm going to call this tinfoil time as well. You know, those constraints, those rule sets, You know, how long are you going to let those rule you? How long are you going to let those stifle you? You know? Because they're movable. They're optional. You know? They're optional. You can change them out if you see fit. You can write your own. They're customizable. You don't have to just roll with what you were given. It feels like you do, because that's how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to feel like that's what it is, but it's not. It's not. Anyway, you know what I mean? Listen. The thumbnail says tinfoil time. If you didn't put on your tinfoil Speedo, what am I supposed to do? You're wet now. Okay? What am I supposed to do? You're wet in your underparts now. It's not my fault. You did that. You chose to do that. You chose to click on the video without the tinfoil Speedo. That's not on me. I put mine on. That's all I'm wearing right now. If I stood up, it would just be thighs and tinfoil. Oh my gosh. But yeah, think about that. And then think about severance and having the chip in your head that separates the two. And that seems like such a wild concept. But then think of the fact that you do that manually already. And how much more of a wild concept is that you already do it manually. And you do it without being told. No one tells you to do it. You just know that if you're a guy that, you know, you like to say the F word, and not the 4-letter F word, the good one, the 3-letter F word. If you're a guy that likes to say that one, you know you can't do that at work, and you just won't do it. You know? It's weird. It's you know, I'm saying social media, it's almost like society puts an invisible shock collar on you that kind of keeps you in check. You do it manually already. You know? But then, how do you fix that? I don't know. I guess you have to live a life where you don't have to do it. I've said for years that I've made a life where I get to wear hoodies and sweatpants every day. And that's what I wear. And I have 8 pairs of the same sweatpants. They're black. You'll always see me in them. That's what I wear. If you ever see me out, you never see my legs now. If you ever see them, they're going to be covered in sweatpants. That's just the way it is. And I'm always wearing hoodies. Sometimes I'll wear a t-shirt. Maybe. You know, Texas summer. You're kind of forced to, or else you're going to pass out. This is just the way it is. You're going to pass out on Ladybird Lake, boardwalk. You're just going to be stranded, and that's it. So, but that's the life I've decided to have. And again, I don't hide, because I've been thinking about this for myself for a long time. But I've been living a life where I don't have to be constrained by the social norms, I guess you could say, but I never think of what puts the social norms in place. And it's not just society. And you know what? I'm going to end this off with this. I forgot to actually get this going, and it might be a little hard to find. I actually might have it in a playlist, but it's Terrence McKenna. This is something that I love. Culture is not your friend. It's the culture that does this to us. Is this him saying it live? Oh, good Lord. No, it's not, is it?
6 billion people.
No, the audio's terrible on that. I don't want that. We'll play this one.
What civilization is 6 billion people trying to make themselves happy.
Here. That's on double speed, but you know, it's the culture that does this. The culture that surrounds us that makes us do this. Here, listen to this.
What civilization is 6 billion people trying to make themselves happy by standing on each other's shoulders and kicking each other's teeth in. It's not a pleasant situation, and yet you can stand back and look at this planet and see that we have the money, the power, the medical understanding, the scientific know-how, the love, and the community to produce the kind of human paradise. But we are led by the least among us, the least intelligent, the least noble, the least visionary. We are led by the least among us, and we do not fight back against the dehumanizing values that are handed down as control icons. This is something, I mean, I don't really want to get off on this tear because it's a lecture in itself, but culture is not your friend. Culture is for other people's convenience and the convenience of various institutions, churches, companies, tax collection schemes, what have you. It is not your friend. It insults you. It disempowers you. It uses and abuses you. None of us are well treated by culture, and yet we glorify, the creative potential of the individual, the rights of the individual. We understand the felt presence of experience is what is most important, but the culture is a perversion. It fetishizes objects, creates consumer mania. It preaches endless forms of false happiness, endless forms of false understanding in the form of swirly religions and silly cults. It invites people to diminish themselves and dehumanize themselves by behaving like machines.
Yes. Yes. Behaving like machines. And now we are directly connected to those machines. And that is the catalyst that makes us act like machines. Again, like I said, you do it manually already when it comes to the whole separation of self from work self, personal self. You do it manually. They're already making you act like a machine, and it's only expanded since they've attached us. My phone's not in the room. But since they've attached us to these machines, and they've attached you based on your profiles and your information, and now you are liable for the things you say. And yes, they can't come to your house or anything unless you're German or you're in the UK or Canada, but they can cancel you. And then it becomes, with the canceling, 42 minutes. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, guys. What? This is a long episode. I'm sorry. I thought this was going to be short. And then when it comes to the canceling, I had this whole thing written here. Who does the canceling? Who cancels you? Is it people? Is it agencies? Is it bots? Smith agents? Who actually cancels you when that happens? Because here's the thing. And again, I told you to put your tinfoil Speedo on. Right? Think about the Matrix. Like, people cancel you, right? Especially when it comes to like a regular person. People cancel you. Or even celebrities. We can put them into it too. People have enough and then they start messaging your job and this and that. But we live in a world today where they could easily just cancel you. They could be the ones. They could see you step out of line in a way. And they could say, well, enough is enough. We already know that there are troll farms, bot farms. Who's to say that they don't go towards people who do things that are unmentionable? Who's to say that doesn't happen? Right? Who's actually canceling you? In the Matrix, when someone sees you step out of line, they don't actually do anything. They just turn into a Smith agent. But it's not actually them. They completely become a Smith agent, and the Smith agent goes after you. And in person today, that is pretty much impossible, except through ideology. But online, that is completely conceivable. I mean, right now, what did that Rogan always talks about, that guy who says that he thinks 50% I think he said 80% of what we see on X are bots. You know, you ever heard of like dead internet theory? That, you know, maybe 5% of what you see online is actually people doing it. So who's canceling you when you do get canceled? Who's actually contacting your work and going after you? You know? Who's sending enough emails to make the talent agency drop that comedian or that actor? Who's actually doing that? It's funny that we automatically, I've never even had this thought process. It's funny we just automatically think it's us. We do it. It's those woke people. Is it? I don't know. Maybe some. I don't know. It could easily you could easily do that with technology. It's bots, swarms, easily. No problem. Sending emails, all that. We now have the technology that's indisputable. This is not even tinfoil. This is ChatGPT, APIs, building your own chatbot, building 100 of them, and making them do what you want. This is an easy thing for people to code. This is a very easy, especially for people to code who also know how to use AI. So they don't even have to do the coding. The AI will do the coding of the bots that will do your bidding when it comes to canceling someone. I don't know. It's weird. You got to think about that. Right? We're at a point where the Smith agents are real. I know there's blue-haired people and there's bad actors and there's paid and this and that. I know. But also you got to think of that. So, again, it goes right in line with what Terrence was saying. Culture is not your friend. It's not your friend. You know, and the culture of today, he didn't have this, but the culture of today is the social media, it's the tech, it's AI. This stuff is not your friend. I mean, I've done episodes on this. This stuff is not your friend. You might use it here and there and it's good, but it's not actually your friend because a lot of it takes away your ability to be a person, to be a functional person. You know, like more and more people are using voice to text. I use voice to text. When I'm answering your comments, it's all voice to text. That's why sometimes it might look weird. It's voice to text. But that's not good. If I do that long enough, I'll be like, oh, how do I spell that? That's not good. And then people who have spell check on, eventually spell check turns off and they're like, I haven't had to spell my own words in a long time. Right? So culture is not your friend. And it's weird because everything is always put in the aspect of it's convenient for us and it helps us. And I guess it does. It does. You can't argue that. We have access to so much information, but it also stunts us in other ways. Every time there's an advancement, there's also a stunting that happens to us as well. Always. I mean, self-driving cars for 10 years. People are going to be like, like Demolition. You ever seen the movie Demolition Man? So she's like, what are you going to do? You're like, how do I drive this thing myself? She's like, you're going to drive it yourself? That's dangerous. She doesn't even know how to drive a car. She gets into it. She's like, oh. She has no idea. Right? So a super like that movie, they're in the future. They're advanced. They can freeze Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes and thaw him out and watch them battle it out in front of Taco Bell. They can do all sorts of things, but they can't drive cars. You know? Like, and we're at that point. But some of us are so young that we don't even know what it is that we can't do. You know? We're that far gone. So yeah, anyway. Told you, it's tinfoil time.